Minnesota's top officials acknowledged early Saturday morning that they had underestimated the destruction that protesters in Minneapolis were capable of inflicting, as a newly issued curfew did little to stop people from burning buildings and turning the city's streets into a smoky battleground. Gunshots rang out near a different police precinct, and flames streamed from businesses over several city blocks, a gas station, a post office, a bank, a restaurant, as residents asked where the police and firefighters had gone. Residents burned police cars in Atlanta, charged a police precinct in New York, and set fires in downtown San Jose, Calif. In Minneapolis, protesters gathered near the police department's 5th precinct the day after they had taken over the 3rd precinct and set it on fire. The protests on Friday had largely been peaceful until nightfall, when people began setting fire to vehicles and buildings and launching fireworks toward the police, who in recent days have fired projectiles and used pepper spray to keep people at bay. Protesters across the country blocked highways and clashed with the police. "Don't shoot" and "I can't breathe." Thousands of protesters gathered in cities across the country on Friday night after a fired Minneapolis police officer was charged with third-degree murder in the death of George Floyd. Minneapolis protests continued even as the city was under a curfew Friday night. Police used tear gas to try to disperse protesters. A march in Houston, where Mr. Floyd grew up, briefly turned chaotic as the windows of a police SUV were smashed and at least 12 protesters were arrested. Local television footage showed police officers clashing with a crowd suspected of vandalizing a patrol car. Earlier, a small group gathered outside police headquarters, declaring "Black is not a crime." The demonstration swelled to more than 1,000 protesters, who blocked traffic while marching on major thoroughfares. In downtown Dallas, protesters and the police clashed during a demonstration blocks from City Hall. Protesters blocked the path of a police vehicle, and then started banging on its hood. Fired officer is charged with third-degree murder after George Floyd's death. The former Minneapolis police officer, who was seen on video using his knee to pin down George Floyd, who died shortly after, was arrested and charged with murder, the authorities announced on Friday. Mr. Chauvin was also charged with second-degree manslaughter, a charge that requires prosecutors to prove he was so negligent as to create an unreasonable risk and consciously took the chance that his actions would cause Mr. Floyd to be severely harmed or die. Derek Chauvin, the former police officer, who was seen on video using his knee to pin down George Floyd, was charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin has been charged by the Hennepin County Attorney's Office with murder and with manslaughter. The developments came after a night of chaos in which protesters set fire to a police station. In Minneapolis, the National Guard was deployed to help restore order, and President Trump injected himself into the mix with tweets that appeared to threaten violence against protesters. A demonstration turned destructive in Atlanta on Friday night, as hundreds of protesters took to the streets, smashing windows and clashing with the police. As the protests went on, police officers in riot gear were gathering. Officers and protesters traded projectiles outside Barclays Center, in New York. Tensions flared in New York for the second night in a row as thousands of protesters stormed the perimeter of Barclays Center in Brooklyn, trading projectiles of plastic water bottles, debris and tear gas and mace with police officers. Protesters were later seen throwing water bottles, an umbrella and other objects at officers, who responded by shooting tear gas into the crowd. But preliminary results from an autopsy indicated that Mr. Floyd did not die from suffocation or strangulation, prosecutors wrote, and that the combined effects of an underlying heart condition, any potential intoxicants, and the police restraint likely contributed to his death. After learning that the man was parked near the store, the first two responding officers, who did not include Mr. Chauvin, approached Mr. Floyd, a former high school sports star, who worked as a bouncer at a restaurant in Minneapolis. A stronger murder charge would have required a motive for Mr. Floyd's death. Thanks for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe.